now you should be able to see the slides, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So Flutter is a cross-platform. That means that it can compile into machine. Well, it compiles into machine code and can be run on several platforms. And we can see in the cross-platform section that it's one of several choices that we can choose. And it's just a new thing in a new business, but it's really gaining a lot of attention. And if we also see this poll, this is from 2019, where it's asking how many people will want to learn this and want to hear more. And Dart, which has a lot of stats, it's the programming language. So we see that it's really worth investing in. So how about if we sort of see what the difference are between three cross-platforms solutions. Then we see that Flutter is built with Dart, the programming language, whereas React Native and Ionic is JavaScript. And a big difference that Flutter has is that it doesn't really compile into native UI components. React Native does that, but React Native then also needs some kind of bridge to know what UI components it needs to make. So it needs to be more platform aware. And that can be extensive, very cost extensive for React Native. And that's probably also why Flutter is faster. So with it being cross-platform, that means that it can be run on several platforms. And we see that Flutter can compile to mobile, also web and desktop. Currently web is in beta and desktop is in alpha, but I think it will go really fast because Flutter is really in growth. So I mentioned that Flutter compiles to machine code, but Flutter is also ahead of time compile. So that means that it sort of renders the UI instantly, and it doesn't need to translate into what UI components it should render. And with Flutter, we write our UI code, well, our UI as a code, and we write it in widgets. It's called widgets. So what you see here on the left, it's a widget tree. And let's just do this. And everything is in one code base. So you don't need to have several other projects for if it's an iOS or an Android or web application. You just have everything in one place. And Flutter also makes it very easy to know what kind of platform you're on, and sort of you can show how the application should feel like. So if you want some iOS feel to the app, if it's an iOS phone, then you can easily do a small check and then show the widget that you want to show. So there are a lot of editors that you can choose. I personally choose IntelliJ IDEA for my Flutter development, and that's because I normally do Android when I'm working. I'm an Android developer, but I sort of want to separate where I do my development. So I want to know what editor you're using. So we should have a poll about that. How's that looking, Sumit? Do we have a poll up?
It's up, and I can see one vote right now. So yeah. VS Code is winning. I like it when it, if I can share it, because it's real time. Can you stop sharing? I can jump in and show you how it looks like.
Yeah. I'll stop sharing. There we go.
Okay, yeah. So it was real time polling, and
oh no,
yeah, this was moving like this.
Oh no, but I like that IntelliJ is winning compared to Android Studio.
But I have seen that, okay, nobody is using VS Code now. No, 58% are using, right?
Yeah.
But I was wondering, I mean, I can compile the code in the VS Code, that Android code, or it's just an editor?
Yeah, you can choose VS Code or IntelliJ or Android Studio, and that's because they have support for Flutter. They have plugins that you can use, and then you can use the features of hot reload or other kinds of things.
All right, so it's for only Flutter, or it's for also native applications? This VS Code shall I use for native application?
I haven't done any native like Android in VS Code. I am not sure.
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen, and it doesn't. I haven't seen anyone using it. But I saw a new one here, Martin. It's different. I actually use different from Stefan Rasmus. So I haven't heard about that tool. Whether I don't know whether it's a mistype or is it a tool, DIFRENT.
What was it called?
It says I use different. I don't know what does that mean.
Which one do you use, Stefan?
Well, yeah. I think, yeah, we don't know. Okay, leave it. So back to you. I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, cool. We'll share again. So I mentioned something about widgets and a widget tree. And this is sort of what a widget tree is. It's how the app is. It's an example of an app that just has all these widget components, and each widget component might have a child component. So you sort of yeah, everything is a widget in Flutter, and let's get to it. So if you want to follow along, you can do that. What we're going to do is to check if we have everything we need for our Flutter development, and then we're going to create a Flutter project. So can you see my screen, or are you still seeing my slides?
I see two terminals.
Perfect. Okay, I was just I can't see what I'm sharing right now with the screen. So what we're going to run is the Flutter Doctor command. Do you need me to enlarge this maybe a little bit?
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is that all right?
Yeah, only the text is not the most readable, to be honest.
Damn. Okay.
It's the font, not the text, but the font itself is not a. I know it looks nice because you have a Mac, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I just wrote Flutter Doctor.
Not a system font.
Yeah, it's. I think I'm using the Mono font. Yeah.
No worries.
But I ran the Flutter Doctor, and it will then give us some feedback and we can see, okay, are we actually ready to do Flutter development? It's actually quite funny that it keeps giving me these errors that I haven't, that I don't have the Flutter plugin or the Dart plugin for IntelliJ IDEA. And I mentioned before that I'm using IntelliJ IDEA, but I don't know. I've tried to look on GitHub issues, and there are no fixes to it right now. Yeah, but it still works. It still works. It's just, yeah. So what we want to do now is actually create a project, and we are going to run the Flutter command, Flutter create, and then we are going to call it GDG underscore Flutter underscore Firebase underscore chat. And what this will do is actually create a skeleton Firebase, Flutter project. So we will do that, and it's running smoothly. And now it created the project, and then it will give us some more info at the end. Actually, it's also running a Flutter Doctor. I can see that. So now we can go into the new folder that it created, the skeleton project, and we will now see that we actually have all these kind of folders and files. So if you don't have an emulator or physical device hooked up, then you should start that. So I will open a simulator. That's I don't think you can do this on a Windows. It just opens the application simulator on my Mac. You can also open Android Studio or IntelliJ IDEA, and if you have any emulators running, or if you don't, then you can start it from Android Studio. I can show that later. What did I want to show now? Yeah. So I also have the links here. If you want, you can take a screenshot. You can find the links in the chat. But we saw previously from Laura that that she had some designs, and what we are going to create now is actually this. There's a chat here. Code and IJ. Cool. So what we will start is just to get a little feel of how you actually write Flutter code. So now I created this new project, and I will actually open it in my editor. So I'll do that right now. I'll first close this, and then I will open the new folder that I created. I have it down in my test folder, and this is the new one. So I want to open the project. And I mentioned that you could find your devices or emulators. It will be shown up here. It looks similar in Android Studio, and you should use Android Studio to start emulators. I also have some, no, yeah, okay. So I mentioned that we are starting a skeleton project, and it's what we have here. So let's run it on our emulator. It will take some time to start, but when we start it, then it will, when we make new changes, it will be really fast, and that's what makes it makes Flutter development very easy. So normally the first build takes half a minute, 45 seconds. Depends on the project size. So have everybody started the project?
Yes, I'm up and running.
You're up and running, and it's building on your emulator as well?
I have it building on an iOS emulator and on an Android physical device.
That's cool. That's cool. Then you can test both of them. Okay. Are you using Android Studio or VS Code?
I'm both using Android Studio and VS Code. Today I set up VS Code just to see how that was running. So right now I'm using VS Code for it.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. So now we get the app up and running, and it's a simple app. You can, yeah, it's a counter, but we don't really want this code. We want something completely else. We want to imitate the design that Laura has given us. So let's just delete everything. And let's set up the main method again. I know that I deleted it, I probably shouldn't. And we will then have the run app. It will be a material app. And in here, we will, let me just put a semicolon. In here, we will have a title. And let's just call it GDG Firebase. Okay. And for our home screen, we want a scaffold. And a scaffold is like this painting where we can paint our widgets onto it. So we will then have a scaffold. And in our scaffold, we want an app bar. So let's create an app bar widget here. Boom. And let's have a title for the app bar. And that will then be a text widget. Let's just GDG Firebase. Cool. Now let's run it again. And now look how fast it was. It was a split second. When I'm doing Android development, it takes so much time. Okay, so we don't really need to do any testing. So let's just delete the test folder. We don't need that. And let's actually try and do an app drawer. We want to slide something. We want to show some more information. So actually, let's wait with the app drawer. Let's put a theming on our material app. So right now we have some themes that we can instantiate here, and we can specify because we want to follow a design, and she gave us some color coding. So with this, we will then have a theme data object, but we don't really have like what we need to put in right now. So let's create a folder, and let's call it helpers. And this this folder will just have code that will help us throughout the whole project. It can be constants, and in this case, it will be constants for color. So let's create a Dart file within the folder, and let's call it app constants. And in here, we will then create a class, and we will call it app constants. And now in here we can put all the theme specific colors to our app that has been specified from our designer. I won't type everything, so I'm just going to copy and paste it from the codelab. So what we have here is some static constants, and that means that we can call app constants dot app primary color. I will show that later. Right now we will also import the material, so we can actually use the widgets. Yeah, so right now, as we have a constant class, we can then specify our themes. So in here, we can then specify the primary color for our app by just calling app constants. And then we have a static method that will take the hex code constants and give us a color widget. So now we can say app constants dot app primary color. And we can actually do this to all of our theme specific, our theme. We can specify the whole theme by doing this. I am going to copy and paste this, so I won't be typing too much. And I am going to format the whole thing here. Is the size of the letters big enough for you, or do you need me to scale up? Is it all right?
It's fine for me, but
cool. Okay, I'll just continue. So now if we then run it again, or actually just do a Command S, this is doing a hot reload. I could have done the same by just pressing the hot reload here. So whenever we have any changes, and just saves the file, Control S, Command S, then it will then do a reload. Okay. Let's see. Okay, cool. Okay, so now we have sort of a white theme to it. Let's now make an app drawer. So we will just make a private method here called app drawer. And we want to return a drawer widget. And this drawer will then have a child, which will then be a column. And the column will accept several children, several widgets that we can put in here. I am going to copy and paste the code because it's a big amount that I need to write. Just gonna Damn. That was bad formatting. Okay. Okay, so now that I have copy and pasted the app drawer method, we see that it's currently grayed out. It's not being used. And we know that the drawer, the burger menu, it will be in the app bar. So we can see if there's a field here for it. Okay, is it, there it is. Okay, and then we can specify the app drawer. Now if we run it, then we will have burger menu, and it will then give us a drawer here. Okay, so currently we have an error here, and that's because we don't really have any assets. So let's create an asset folder, and we will do that in our Flutter project. We will then create assets, and then we will also create a folder within that, which will then be images. And currently, do I have a link for the images? I'm not sure. I don't think I have a link for the images.
In the chat window.
Is it in the chat window?
I just added it.
Okay. Cool. Thanks. And then I'll download it so we can use it. Okay. I don't know whether it's being saved. Okay. Okay, cool. So let me then put the image to where it's needed. And that is in the images. Okay, so now if we try and run it again, then we will see that it's still not there. And that's because in our pubspec YAML file, we have not set it to look for any assets. So what we're going to actually do is make sure that it's looking for user and then placeholder, I think it's called. Yeah. Then I'll try and run it again. No file. Okay, maybe I need to stop the app and start it again. No. Does not exist. Oh. That's problem.
Martin?
Yeah.
At least I can see that the GitHub link, it's called .jpg and
Yeah.
not JPEG. So delete the E maybe. Yeah.
Ah, cool, cool. Thanks.
No worries.
Okay. Okay. Actually, we can also just delete this and just make it look for all kinds of files that is in our images folder. And then start it again. And there we actually have it. So when we need to put in some assets, we need to actually show it where it's going to look for. Okay, so maybe if you guys have been following along, then you can maybe take a screenshot of the screen and upload it. I think we have a link where you can upload it to, don't we? Have it somewhere. Do you know that, Sumit? If we have any place?
Yeah, I'm gonna share that link.
Cool. So did you guys manage to create a snap drawer?
No, not really. I wasn't following along.
Okay, so you can also follow along with the codelab. I can send the link again. Let's see. Cool. Okay. Did you guys get the app to run on the emulator or physical device? Okay. Oh, Patrick is ahead. That's cool. That's cool. Very good. Okay. So I will continue then. So we got the designs that we need to follow, and as a developer, when you look at designs, then you're checking, okay, how can I actually do this? And with Flutter, we know is okay, there are some widgets that we can look for, and we can determine what can be a different kind of widget. And as a developer, I look and see how I can actually construct it, like how I need to put everything in. And here we see certain elements. We have an app bar, and we also have a text widget in the app bar. We also have a list here that you don't really see specified, but it's probably a list view widget. And then you have some images and columns. So you sort of know how you need to, or you will get a hang of it when you do more experiencing with Flutter, how you need to compose the UI for that. Okay. So I think we should build the chat screen now. And what we will do here is that we will create a screens folder in our, yeah, here we are. So we will create our screens folder in our lib folder, screens. And then we will create a Dart file inside of that folder. and we will call it chat screen. And then we will create a stateful widget. Now let me jump back to the slides here. So a stateful and stateless, that is two different things in Flutter. So with stateless widgets, such as a screen that only needs to show something, it won't really change. It could be a thing with only some text displayed. Whereas stateful, that's where you need to handle something and show new changes to whatever UI you have on your screen. So stateless is immutable, and stateful is where you need to handle showing things, such as a chat screen. You have a text field where you input the text. Then the text needs to be showed in the text field. So you know that you would need a stateful widget. Therefore, our chat screen will be a stateful widget. And before I copy and paste the chat screen, I just want to show you some awesome things that you can do with IntelliJ, JetBrains products. You can use these shortcuts. So right now I just wrote this, and then if I press the STFUL, then it will give me a new stateful widget. And let me just call it chat screen. And notice how it changed here, and also there, and in here, and there. So it just filled out these places, and that makes it really easy to do development. But let me just delete this and put in what we need. So we have the import, so we can use the widgets. And now let us run it again. Yeah. And now we will still have the old screen. So let's go back to main.dart. And let's, instead of having a scaffold here, then let's have the chat screen. And it automatically imports the file where the chat screen widget is in. So now if we run it again, we will then have the new screen with chats in the app bar as a title in the app bar. Okay. So we want to imitate the design. And I mentioned that we will look into like what components there is. And as a developer, you quickly notice, okay, how I need to compose it. And we will try and do this. So let's build the screen. And as we know that it's going to be a text app, then we also know that this class right here, it needs to have what is a text editing controller. And that is a controller where we can add text and also clear our text when needed. So we will use this for our text field. And so now let's also create a method for where we actually have our message composer, and the message composer will be the small area where you have the text field and the send button and also the camera button. So let's create a method, and let's call it build message composer, because that's where we actually want to compose our messages. And we want it to return a container. So right now I'm just going to copy and paste everything that we need in our method. And then I'm going to put it in here so we can see what we will get. Right now we are not getting anything, and that's because we haven't really specified that the body of this scaffold, meaning the app screen, and it's underneath the app bar, that's the body. That will be this method that we have made, the build message composer. So now when we build it again, we see that we get these colors. Cool, okay. I think maybe my constant files is wrong with the colors. Okay. Maybe it shouldn't be background color. Let me go check.
It's the primary color, Martin.
What?
App primary color.
Primary color, yeah. I noticed that it was wrong. Yeah, cool. And then it should change to some red. Okay, that looks more like it. I don't know why I just let that pass. Okay, cool. So let me tell you about what we have actually made. So we have this container here. This container that has the widgets, and we see that, okay, they need to be displayed on a row because they are not underneath each other, they are on the same line, you could say. So we need to use what is called a row widget, and it will have several child widgets. In this case, we will then use a raw material button for our button, image button, and it has certain parameters that you can specify. What kind of icon it should be, if it should have any shape, if it needs to be elevated, given it some shadow, and then also what theme color it should be. The red theme, primary color, that's what we're using here. And then we have our text field input, the input field, and we want it to be expanded to fill as much as it can between our two buttons. And that text field widget has a controller parameter, and that's where we are putting our text editing controller. Then we're also giving it some other values here. And some hints, and yeah, it's being put into what is called an input declaration. And then lastly, we have our send button, which is an icon button widget. Okay, so let's continue. Right now, we don't really see, right now we want to see also the messages. And we know that it's going to be a list. And then it will have some message widgets that we're going to make. But before that, we also need to make what is called models. And models is classes. For example, a model class could be user, a user with ID, name, and probably also email. So what we're going to make here is another directory folder called models. Okay, didn't really do anything there. models. Okay, cool. And we want to create a file, another dot file, and we will call it user. And in here, we will then create a class, a user class, and it will then have some fields. Let me just put it in here. Okay, so what I want to show you here is that you can, in Dart, you can sort of assign fields on the same line, sort of giving these fields the same type, and also if it's final or constant. And we can do that easily by just put a comma and then specify what the new profile image, the new field should be. And we can also do that to email and bio. So now we know that all these four fields, they are they are of type string. But right now they are giving me an error. And if we look and see what that is because we haven't created a constructor. So let's do that quickly. We will then just type user, and then we will use the curly brackets. So we sort of gives all the parameters within this user constructor. It will be named. So you will have to say user. Let me first do it. Like this. So it's very easy to do constructors in Dart. So now when you create a new user object, then it's as easy as saying ID equals something. So curly brackets to do named parameters in constructors. That's really easy. Let's also create another model for our message. And I'm just going to copy paste this. There we go. And I should also okay. Port user. I'll probably forget some code. Yeah, I think I missed some code to put into this codelab. So let me just go to the file to get the last code. So what I'm putting in is dummy data for our messages. Okay. Here we go. Cool. Okay. So now this file also has a list of messages called chats, and also a list of messages. Cool. And users. Okay, so what we're going to do now is actually show the messages. So let's get back to our chat screen. and then we will create another method in this chat screen. So below the build method composer, I will create another method called build message. And we want this method to take in a message object, and then we will also put in another one to see if a message is from oneself, the current user. So let me import this so it knows that it's a message that it's handling. Okay, and what we are going to have in here is this code. Cool. So what we have here is how the messages should be displayed. And we have everything wrapped in a container. And then we let me run it. Okay. So now I can find we deleted one of them. Okay, cool. Got it. So we have the whole styling for how a message should be right now. But right now we are not putting it into our build method. So we can really see what's happening. And for us to do that, we need to then make something else in this body parameter in our build method. And we will, let me just delete this. We will then create a list view because we know that it's going to be a list view. And then we're going to use the builder to do this. And this builder will then take context, build context, and it will actually also take in an int, which will then be the index. But we also need to specify other things than just the item builder. We also need to specify how many items will be in there. And we do that by using the item count. And then we will then say, okay, our messages. Okay, we don't really have, we need to specify our message. So I am making another field here. And it will then be a final list of messages. And it's actually pointing to the messages in our message.dart file, which is this list of all these messages. So now what we're saying is that there will be this amount of messages in this list view. So it should only build as many as that. We also need to put in some other things, reverse, and then also give it some padding. Give it some padding on the top. Let's give it 15. Then inside of this item builder, we will then get our message. So let's do that by creating a variable, a final variable of type message, and we will call it message. And then it will be the item that it's currently on. So it creates items, and then it has like a count, and then it will see, okay, get me this message from this point of the list. Then we will also have, let's just build it. So let's return, and then the new method that we have. And right now we haven't specified this is me. So let's just put it as false for now. And let's run it. So currently we don't really have anything. Maybe set it to true. Okay, we try and put in this is me. Let's see. Build message. Okay. Okay, let me try and do some things here. Okay, looks like it don't really get anything from this. Maybe I need to run it again. I'll try and do that. Oh yeah. Okay. So it didn't really get anything from the message list. But what I've done now is change the build method. So what we would experience on an iPhone, especially on an iPhone 10, is that there's this notch at the end, notch right down here at the bottom of the screen, and Flutter actually handles these things really easy by just utilizing another widget called Save Area. And I know that there's also on Android phones some save areas that you need to think about. So what we just did here is wrap our scaffold inside of this save area widget. If I didn't wrap it inside of a save area widget, then it will check. Then it would just pop down there, and then it's right down at the bottom, and it's not really user friendly. So that's why we wrap it inside of this save area thing. Okay, I don't really know why it's not giving me these messages. Are you guys also having trouble showing messages? Well, let's just keep going. Build method. We missed something in our build message in here. Maybe we should return a widget. Yeah, we need to do that. So let's try and return the message. Oh, yeah, okay. I will then update my codelab, not now, but later, because I think I missed that return thing. Okay, well, sometimes you just need to try things. Okay, so yeah, we got the whole layout thing, and we also have the messages, how they're supposed to look like. Now we just need to handle this. So when you type, and when you press send, then it should give us a new message. And with that, we will then create another method. So underneath the build message, we will then create a message that will return nothing. That's void. And we will call it handle submit as well. And it will then take a string as a parameter, and this will be called text. And then inside here, we also need to handle our text editing controller, because we don't want it to concatenate the text. So we need to clear whatever was there, and then we can sort of create our new message with the text that we will get from the parameter. So we will create a message. And this will then have a sender. And the current user is pointing to the current user in the message.dart file. And we will also have some time. Right now, we'll just have it hard-coded. Let's say 8 p.m. And then we will have some text to be text. And that is this parameter, what we get in the method. And we also want to specify some other things. Like, so if it's in one red. Okay, cool. But we also need to update. We need to update our widget and say, okay, we have changed something, you need to rebuild your UI. And we do that with the set state, which is where we will then add our message to our messages by using the insert. And we will just put it at the first place, and then we will give it the new message that we have created. Okay, we also have something extra that we need in our code, and it's this, because we check, let's see, this is a Boolean, and it's being used later to determine when text editing controller is used to compose a message. Okay, cool. Let's save it and run it. I don't handle that yet. Okay. I don't think I have it. Where did I put it? Should be build message composer. There it is. Expanded. That's the text field. Unchanged. Okay. Let me just check the file real quick. Okay, cool. So right now we were missing this in our text field here. No. We need to say, okay, when should, this is a Boolean, so we are actually going to check when we are actually typing anything. And then in, let's see, here we go. So in our icon button where we are sending the message, that's where we should have this. So we will check, okay, if we are composing a message, if that's true, then we should use the message that we are typing, put it into the new method handle submit with whatever we have put into the text message controller text. If not, then don't do anything. So let's run this. And then we see it's not being active. We're not composing anything. So let's say, hey, and there we go. There we have it. Okay. Okay. So when we are doing apps, we also need to think about state management, and that has something to do with if you have a really large application, a lot of UI elements in your screen, then you don't really want everything to be redrawn. Like every widget needs to be redrawn. And when you're doing big projects, then you will use some frameworks or some patterns that you follow. There are a really great framework called Provider. It's a package that where you can specify which widgets should be rebuilt whenever the state has changed, the state of the app. Yeah. I don't think I have anything else to say except that when Flutter renders widgets, then what makes it really fast is that it has like 3 kinds of widget trees. It doesn't have like one really big JSON bridge as probably React Native has. It has references, and then it will only sort of change the state one place, and then it will render to the screen. So it sort of keeps track of 3 kinds of trees, and that also makes Flutter fast. And And that's pretty cool. Yeah, so I will finish here, and then I will let Sumit tell you about Firebase.